Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get Your House in Order, another episode. Today we have Carol Foderick here with us, and we might talk a little bit about real estate. We might talk a little bit about life, but very happy to have her here. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you so much, Helki. It's a pleasure to be here, and I know we've been waiting to do this for a long time. So it's a timely, it's a timely conversation to be chatting about real estate and getting your financial house in order, and what that means for your real estate investment holdings as well.
So, Carol, everybody's panicking. Everybody's hearing about the market and real estate. What can you tell us about the GTA, and what should people be doing today?
That's a great question, and it's one that I'm called to answer so often right now. So what I will say, first of all, is that there is a lot of alarm in the marketplace, not just in the real estate market, but markets in general, right? So people are turning on the news at night. They are watching things. They are consuming media almost 24 hours a day. And I liken this back to maybe the situation that we were in 5 years ago when COVID sort of became real. And we're recording this, mid-March 2025, 5 years to the day almost from when COVID started. I'm finding that the sentiment in the real estate market is very similar to where we started at that time. And so people starting to get very nervous, starting to get concerned about what outside economic forces could do to the real estate market. The first thing I would say is just we need to lower the temperature. We need to separate fact from fiction about what's really happening and what could happen under a worst case scenario, and understand that the fundamentals of the real estate market truly haven't changed. Housing is not a discretionary expense. We all need a roof to live under at the end of the day. And remembering that for most of us, our home is our biggest asset. And so taking thoughtful advice about what the next steps of your life are going to look at from an industry professional that can help you navigate this market right now.
So you've been in the real estate world for quite a while. Can you tell me a little bit of why and how you got into it?
Yeah, 22 years, which seems like yesterday, but also it seems like 100 years ago. Yeah, I started in real estate in a way that, many great agents do. I started at the very bottom of the real estate ladder. Believe it or not, I was a real estate receptionist when I was still in university 22 years ago. Have climbed through, the various levels of a brokerage, and am now the proud broker owner of the Carol Foderick Real Estate Group, which is one of the largest real estate groups in the country. Don't say that to impress anybody. I just want them to know that my everything I'm sharing today comes from a place of knowledge, and maybe that 30,000 foot view that comes from being able to see, literally hundreds of transactions taking place within our team every single year. So really, my knowledge comes from a place of just being of service to many, many clients at many different seasons of their life and different asset classes. So when we talk about what's going in the real estate market, I can speak to everything from entry level rentals all the way up to, real estate, multi-res real estate investments. So commercial, industrial, all of that. So really a wide scope.
So that's when I see the two bridges together. You've been here for a long time. You see the long-term value of planning and being there for your clients and being there for yourself and keeping your house in order. You also see the noise and the mess that's happening in the market and all the panic and should I sell, what do I do, and so on. You bridge the two. You are an advisory team and you bring the set of advisors to your clients. How do you stay organized yourself?
Yeah. So, I share this with anybody who is interested in asking, because, in addition to the real estate business that I run, I'm also running other businesses on the side as well, too, that are complementary to real estate. But still, you've got, you wear multiple hats. On a side note, I'm also the mother of two small kids. I'm a wife. Like, there's a lot going on in my life. I would say from an organizational point of view, first of all, having a great team in place to be able to rely on for best advice is absolutely key. So for me, it's not me becoming a tax expert. It's me having a great, accounting team and a bookkeeper that I can rely on. When it comes to my financial investments, it's having a great financial advisor that, I don't need to spend, 2 weeks at tax season going down a rabbit hole to understand. I need to be able to make a call, understand where I'm at, what I need to do in order to move the ball forward on my financial goals, and be able to rely on that. And similarly for my own clients, that's, the relationship that I always hope to have. So when people are concerned about real estate or just have questions about real estate in whatever season they're in, being able to have them come to me and offer a no pressure approach that gives them the benefit of options, and just walking down the path to understand each of those options so that they can make the decision that is right for them in the time that is right for for them without the pressure of sort of that commission salesperson role in the background always. My goal is to really be advisory in nature.
And that's how you train the people that work with you. Let's be of service. Let's help people make their biggest investment or one of their biggest investments potentially in their lifetime with confidence. Why do you do that like that? When did it change for you?
Well, I'm not sure it ever changed. And I will tell you, in 22 years, the real estate industry is one that has changed a lot in the last 22 years. So I'll take a step back because I'm sure some of, your listeners will have had experiences in the real estate world that I'm sure predate, the year 2000, and many that are just having their first real estate experiences now. To be sure, when I started in real estate, the environment was very different. We didn't have the prop tech plays that are in existence now. We didn't have the access to information. We didn't have the access to media and by extension, social media that we have now. So the industry has changed a lot. What I think has not changed is the fundamentals of providing good service. You can look at that and say, these are, the things that make great advisors, whether it's a financial advisor, a real estate advisor, the things that make those people great and those businesses great can be tracked back for decades and decades and even centuries. So it's the idea of putting your customer first and putting their interests first, which may sound very elementary to some of the people listening to this, but to be clear, it is when you get in front of a salesperson, that is not always necessarily the approach that they take. So for me, and by extension, the 22 agents that work for me, for us, it is very important to just provide that non-pushy service that allows people to make the decisions that they need to make based on information and analytical research, and not based on what's going to serve me as a real estate salesperson first and foremost. And in fact, it's why I have my broker designation, because I hate that term salesperson so much. I mean, just like you, we do sell products, we do market and transact inventory. But at the end of the day, showing up in service to your clients is the most fundamentally positive way that we can be of service to them, because when you look back at the other approaches that some of the other agents will take, it's not that, and it is very agent first, and we try to be something a little bit better than that.
And I find in our world, yours and mine are parallel, but at the end of the day, you're helping people get peace of mind when they decide. And we also have a superpower that is you can help a family get ahead, but you also have the power to destroy a family. And if you're not spending time with a family, understanding what is it that they want to do, and you help them get to that point after having that conversation, and you just say, you should do this, you should do that, you should buy this insurance, you should buy these funds, you should invest in this, you should it's not a personalized approach, and by definition it would probably not work for these people. What's your take, or how do you talk to people when they're dead set that they want to buy in this market?
Well, I think, you said, how do you talk to people? I think the first step before you even talk is truly listening. So listening and asking questions is the first part of this. So you need to understand what their motivation is. If somebody wants to buy in this market, if somebody wants to sell in this market, you need to understand what the motivation is and what the level of motivation is as well too. So is it with the intention of solving an immediate problem, like where am I going to live next month? Are they intending to make a purchase with the intention of creating intergenerational wealth? And this is going to be a property that they own for decades or generations in their family. So understanding what their motivation is allows us to be able to best serve them in this moment of need.
And what's your sense in terms of demand and supply, and where's the GTA going right now? What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Well, it's interesting because you could ask 100 different real estate professionals, 100 different economists, and you would get 100 different perspectives. I think the reality is that there is too much happening on a granular level to be able to make a generalization. So within the GTA, you have different municipalities, you have different asset classes, you have different types of asset even within those classes. So I'll give you an example. I was on a call this morning with a condo seller who has bought something out of the city. It's her retirement home, getting ready to start construction on that. And and will be moving towards selling her condo in the next few months. Absolutely panicking because she read an article today to say that there's 55 months of inventory, condo inventory on the market right now. And I think that this is where the interpretation of the information that's being blasted out at the media, to our clients becomes so critical for us as advisors. When I walk back those statistics with her and really break them down, I explain to her that a lot of that is pre-construction inventory. A lot of that is investor-driven inventory. So, the smaller bachelor and one bedroom units in towers that have not been completed yet or are nearing completion. Very different than the retirement, 2,000 square foot retirement oriented condo that she's currently living in, which, to be clear, is moving very, very quickly. Average days on the market for her type of condo is under 2 weeks. So just understanding that, the clients hear big statements in the media, and that's the very nature of, the clickbait, right? Get you to engage, get you a little bit scared, get you a little bit panicked. But being able to walk backwards and break down what's happening in the market in different places geographically, but also different styles and types of houses really makes it easier for people to understand. And so GTA as a whole, hard to predict. I mean, what's happening in Mississauga is going to be different, in a freehold house in Mississauga is going to be different than what's happening in one of those bachelor investor condos in downtown Toronto. I think that's why it's so important to partner with somebody that can interpret the huge amounts of analytical data in a way that makes it digestible for you as a consumer.
So for someone who, obviously it's not the same conversation for a newcomer than somebody who's been here 10 years or is about to get married. But what are the common basic starter questions that people ask when it comes to should I buy, should I sell? Even if it's a second investment property, or what are the common questions that go into the conversation?
It's a great question. And I think the first one that people, really need to fundamentally get their mind around is what's happening with the mortgage market, because nobody, whether it's any of those scenarios that you talked about, is completely unaware of the fact that we've had volatility in the mortgage market in the last, 5 years. Interest rates came absolutely down during COVID, went hugely up after COVID, are coming back down again. And it feels like they've been on a little bit of a borrowing roller coaster, which is a true statement. I mean, you can speak to this even better than I can. Interest rates on the especially the residential lending front have been very volatile over the last few years. And so I would say it's the first point of education that we need to get people comfortable, not only with where interest rates are at right now, but also where we're projecting them to be over the next, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So that when the renewal comes up, under whatever term it is that they sign for, they feel comfortable with where the market's going to be, not only now, but where they're going to be when they have to face renewal. So I would say the first question, regardless of what type of transaction it is always around what's going on with mortgage rates. And then, of course, sale prices next to that. So, nobody wants to buy an investment, whether it's their home or something that's going to be rented out. Nobody wants to buy a piece of real estate that they think is going to decrease in value. So understanding the underpinnings of what makes some neighborhoods more valuable than others, super important. And I would say those are the first two things that people need to really educate themselves on before they move forward with any kind of transaction.
And you know what, you mentioned something that I find comes up very often. And it doesn't matter how sophisticated or affluent or educated people are in terms of literally formal education. Financial literacy, when it comes to your own stuff, gets tricky, gets blurry, gets confusing. And when we talk to our clients about planning and really having the money conversation and normalizing the money conversation with the family and so on, it's trying to get them to think long term. If you're trying to just focus on investments and beat the market and time the market, that's not going to work. And I find that many people went out and bought houses when the mortgage rates were low, and they did not have the foresight of running a stress test. What happens if the rates go double, triple, quadruple, right? In the 90s, I understand, I wasn't here, but I know the rates were at 20% or 14, 15%. They didn't run those numbers. Now renewal comes and they might not be able to afford it. And now the government may or may not step in, but you can't depend on government to save you from yourself. And I've seen horror stories. I'll never forget one time somebody who told us that the agent had been so kind that had lent them money to pay for the down payment. All my alarms went off, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And there was a second mortgage to pay for the down payment. Those things sound crazy. Like if you can't afford it, you can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And owning is great, but renting is not terrible, right? I mean, if my dishwasher breaks, I have to go and get a new one. But if my landlord's dishwasher breaks, well, I just make a phone call and off we go, right? Or in theory, that's how it should work. But with ownership come huge responsibilities. And if you're not thinking of staying in the unit or the house or the property for X number of years, don't run your numbers through good and bad numbers. You're putting yourself out there. I think people need to ask more questions. What's your sense? Are people asking questions? Are advisors not advising? What's happening? Because
yeah, so there's so much to unpack with what you said. So I think it is also a true statement when interest rates are low and the demand for real estate or the excitement around real estate is high, it's very easy to fall victim from predatory lending practices. And what I mean by that is that, you're thinking about buying a home and you think your budget, I'll use, round numbers just as an example. You think that, based on your payments and your income and your debt ratio that, maybe $900,000 is a comfortable purchase price. But then you go and speak to, your bank and you haven't gotten the second opinion of a financial advisor about how your home purchase factors into the whole ecosystem of your financial well-being. And you go into your bank and the person, on the other side of the desk tells you that, oh, you can actually afford much more than 900. Why don't you think about borrowing $1.2 million? And you start looking at houses that are now $1.2 million and they sure are a lot prettier than the ones that are priced at 900. So it becomes, people tend to come by it honestly. And we have to remember that when we're borrowing money, whether it's for a real estate purchase or any purchase, the higher priced items are always going to be more appealing. And the person that we're borrowing money from gets compensated based on the amount of money that you borrow. So it's a conversation I will often have with buyers to say, listen, you're qualified for X, but first of all, are you comfortable with what that payment looks like? And are you comfortable with what that payment would look like if the payment became much higher as a result of interest rates going back up? And again, we live in inflationary times. There's a lot of discussion about whether tariffs will have an impact on inflation. We should always be preparing for a hell or high water scenario, right? So we always want to protect ourselves against what happens, if something goes sideways in the economy or our life or with employment or anything. So the first question I ask is, do you really need, first of all, are you comfortable with that payment? Even though they've approved you for that, are you comfortable with what that would look like on a monthly basis? And then second of all, do we really need to spend it? Because to be clear, our needs and wants could be infinite. It is up to me as the real estate advisor to be able to sometimes pull them back and say, okay, remember when you said that, you needed 3 bedrooms and parking for 2 cars and 2 bathrooms in a certain school district? Let's remember that that's all achievable at this lower price point. And so, we talk about, how to get people into a house that they're comfortable with. It's always been my goal that I want to be able to sit in their living room 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and, reflect with them on what a great purchase this was. I never would want to encourage somebody to overspend simply for the sake of overspending if it meant that it was not going to be a financial benefit to them later on.
And I think it's very important for people to understand the value and the concept of financial planning. People think that financial planning means you're not going to spend. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It's really an exercise where you find out really what is your range. And you make decisions based on numbers, right? Can I afford it? What happens if rates go up? What happens if rates go down? What happens? And probably, the conversation is different for somebody in their 50s than it is for somebody in their 30s. But the last thing you want if you're a new home buyer in your 30s, whether you have a big job or whatever it is, or with a lot of earning potential, is sacrificing your mental wellness or well-being because you overstretched yourself. And how do you know that you're overstretched if you haven't really had the conversation as a couple, ran the numbers, ran scenarios where you decide whether you can afford it or not? And now when the markets turn, I'm seeing a lot of stress. Fortunately, our clients have been planned for long term, and our plans are really conservative. Would rather under promise and over deliver than telling them in their 90s that they have to go get a job at Home Depot, right? So that's not the way to go. And if the bad things don't happen, when great, then we're all winning. But what if, right? Well, what if? We're like, why do you wear a seatbelt, right?
It's an interesting thing because people would automatically think, I think, because I sell real estate, that I should suggest buy as much real estate as you can. No, I want to be clear. Real estate is a valuable egg in a very what should be in a very well balanced Easter basket. I always kind of use that scenario because all of your wealth cannot be tied up into the net value of your home. And I see so many people panicking about fluctuations in the market, in the real estate market, which, to be clear, like every other market, is going to happen. Generally speaking, real estate starts here and ends here, but the path between the two places is not completely smooth and linear in one direction. It's sometimes growth in real estate looks like, plus 2%, plus 3% the next year, then -2, then -3, then +8. There's volatility there. And I think that's important to remember. But where I see people panicking is when they have all of their eggs in the real estate basket and they don't have a diversified portfolio. As a real estate, broker that sells real estate all over Southern and Central Ontario, you would think that I own, everything that I own is real estate. And it's true. I do have a very healthy real estate portfolio, but it's also balanced with a healthy respect for the taxation benefits that a lot of the other investment products that are offered allow us to take advantage of. RSPs, RESPs, TFSAs, non-registered savings accounts. Like, you can't put all of your financial eggs in one basket under any scenario. So sure, housing is not a discretionary expense, and I do believe that it's a fundamental human right that everybody should at some point in their life be able to own the roof that they live under in a season and a time that's financially, right for them. But all of your money, your entirety of all of your disposable income should not be going into your real estate every month. There has to be an allocation in those different baskets for other savings and investment tools.
We just had a conversation with with a family that they, while rates were low, they went out and bought something like 8 or 10 properties, and everything was going great. But then interest rates go up. And when interest rates go up, what happens? The price of houses goes down. I mean, generally speaking, certainly not at the speed that is needed, but whatever. I mean, it's a supply situation, right?
There's an inverse relationship between the two. When money is cheap, prices are high, and when interest is high and it's expensive to borrow, prices will be reflected by that.
Dropping. And now they have to liquidate one of these fire sale situations, and the whole strategy just didn't turn out, and that sets them back 8 to 10 years. And it's trying to beat the market, trying to outsmart a market that's been around for decades, centuries. Like, if you look at things and really surround yourself with a team that will tell you, it's not the right time, or you might not be able to afford this, I think you're doing a service to yourself and to your family. When on a regular week, when you talk to people, what are common mistakes you see people make?
Yeah, from a real estate perspective, a couple of things. So first of all, I see a lot of excitement around people owning investment real estate, and sometimes the excitement, which has been exaggerated by social media influencers and, articles that are being put out in the news media about buy investment properties, buy rental properties. Remember that a lot of time, and we're recording this podcast in Canada, and I would imagine that most of, our listeners today are Canadian, understand that when you're watching American influencers about being able to buy multi-res investment properties, a lot of this is, or you're watching the house flipping shows about how they bought a house and renovated it and resold it, 4 months later for twice the price. Understand that a lot of that is put together through the American lens, and they don't have the same taxation structure. It's also a lot of smoke and mirrors. I want to be clear. If you actually, even when I watch those shows about house flipping, as an example, somebody who did it for years, they're missing a lot of components on that, end of the show tally sheet about how much money they made. So I would say that, this idea of real estate being fast, easy, cheap money where they can just turn over a profit very quickly, that's just factually, incorrect. So I would say make sure that the lens that you're looking through is a Canadian one, because our taxation is very different than what it is in the United States. The other thing I would say is people trying to buy real estate at all costs. So as an example, especially with investment real estate, they're going to get like a group of 6 other investors together, and they're going to all put in $10,000, and that's going to be able to make them the minimum down payment for what they need for a high interest, high ratio mortgage. I would much rather those clients took a much more conservative approach and did it individually than together with this highly leveraged, complicated investors group that comes with, and often not even properly legally papered, I should add as well too, where there's no exit strategy or, no understanding of, what happens if the market goes down or you're not cash flowing anymore, of all of that. So there's that. And finally, the third one that I would say, the mistake that I see most people make is not recognizing that often their first investment property is the one that they're currently living in now. So I'll give you an example. Many people, their property, their path to owning freehold real estate will often include, say, a condo or a condo townhouse or something like that, a more modest piece of real estate that they're then building equity in, and then being able to parlay into something, bigger, more their dream home. I often will sit with people during a listing presentation where their intention is to sell that and to use the assets to buy something else. And I will talk to them about the benefits of perhaps holding on to the real estate that they already own and using it as a cornerstone piece of what could become a real estate investment portfolio later on. And it sounds counterintuitive that somebody that you've asked to call in to talk about selling your condo or your townhouse encourages you to think about, buying it. But the reality is that, in Canada and especially in Ontario, the cost for disposition and acquisition of real estate is very high, tens of thousands of dollars sometimes. So sometimes the best move that they can make is to work alongside a like-minded, financial advisor, a real estate advisor, and an accountant that has a great understanding of taxation as it relates to rental properties, and actually to hold on to the real estate that they own now, if it's possible to do, and if it's financially, feasible for them. So I'd say that's the big 3 common mistakes that I see in real estate.
And you're not going to outsmart the market. There will be some people that will be lucky and their guess worked, but generally speaking, fast money is not for everyone, right? And it's either not legal or not sustainable, or only very few have these ideas, right? And again, like all these people with a lot of, there are always going to be someone richer than you, which is fine. But these people now look like they were always rich, and there's a good chance that they risked a lot in the past, and now they're where they are because they did that. But self-made people didn't become millionaires overnight, and people need to be patient, disciplined, and consistent, right? It's not magic.
It's not magic. Small and steady, I think. Small and steady steps that are well researched and where you're relying on a team of professionals that can help you get there. You don't need to understand every element of taxation, every element of financial planning, but you do need to partner with somebody who does understand it from a very high level and can break it down and apply it to your situation in the best way possible.
So you've been 22 years in the industry. That's one
Indeed.
of my favorite questions. If you were to look at little Carol, age 10, what would you tell her if she wanted, and she's like, out there trying to figure out her life and what she wants to do, and you said, you know what, you're going to be in the real estate world. What would you tell Carol, little Carol?
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, you'll hear these sayings about like, don't, wait to buy real estate and wait. And that's really easy to say, try to accumulate as much real estate as you can early in life. Like, let's be honest. What I would say to myself is you're going to make a lot of mistakes early on, financially, personally. I mean, my goodness, we could all sit here and tell stories about the people we were in our early 20s, little Carol, right? Just like yourself. Like the reality is that we all have growth. But what I would have said is be careful whose advice you listen to, but be kind to those who provide it. So what I mean by that is that, your uncle, your grandmother, your next door neighbor, the banker, the teller at your bank are all going to have really well-intentioned advice for you. But these are not necessarily the people that you should be listening to. Take a little bit of extra time, do some research, partner with people that have gone before you on the journey that you hope to take, and ask questions. Be curious. Don't assume that, just because you heard something, it's factually correct. Take the time to do your research and to understand what next steps look like on your journey for whatever path it is you hope to walk, and try to get mentorship or understanding from people who have already walked that. And those people who have done it successfully are going to be the people who are most open to sharing that knowledge with you. So it's one of the reasons why I love working with first-time buyers and first-time investors so much, because I get to go back and talk to them like little Carol, making her first real estate purchase. It allows me to go back and share with people the knowledge that I've learned over, thousands of transactions and 20 plus years in the industry. So partner with those who have walked that path ahead of you and ask questions. That's what I would say.
I love it. And also be kind to yourself, because sometimes we're our own worst enemies, I guess.
Fail forward, right? Like, no, there is, and I think that this is the biggest thing that I see in real estate. And I'm sure, yourself in financial planning as well. People are so impossibly hard on themselves. They've made one bad investment once in their life, and then they're like, I'm never investing again. I'm going to keep it all in a savings account at, 1%. We all make mistakes. Like, the reality is, financially, personally, give yourself the grace to be able to say, you know what? I made that mistake. I'm not going to make it again, but I'm going to fail forward, because that's people who truly have financial security and wealth. It's not that they have never made financial mistakes. It's that they've made them and they've learned from them, and they've pivoted their perspective, they've pivoted their path, and then continued to move forward.
Can you imagine if we had a little magic wand that could delete all our mistakes? Wouldn't it be cute?
Would it be? I mean, I don't know. Like, I live a life that I'm really proud of, and it's certainly not perfect, but it is one that, that I've worked hard to achieve. And I ask myself, if I could go back and change a whole bunch of things in the past, and it meant that I'd be somewhere different than where I'm at right now in this moment, would I want to be? I don't think so, but that's, yeah.
No, I agree. I was having that conversation with someone last week, and I was like, indeed, I wouldn't change anything. Yeah. Was it easy? No. Was it smooth? Oh, no. But here we are. Carol, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you everyone for listening. We will be sharing this episode and how to get in touch with Carol in the notes below. And we look forward to having you in the next round. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.